What happens when the most secretive mission of a CIA agent is put in jeopardy by an unexpected betrayal? In this story, we dive into a high-stakes situation where one phone call doesn't just change the course of a mission, it shakes the very foundation of a carefully constructed plan. Meet Agent Laura, a seasoned CIA operative tasked with a covert assignment that could potentially shift the balance of power in a foreign nation. She's always been one step ahead, calculated and precise, but when a corrupt police officer stumbles upon a critical piece of information, everything unravels. In a tense moment, this officer's racist tendencies blur his judgment, and a single phone call sets off a series of events that threaten to expose Lara's entire mission. As Lara races against time to salvage the operation, she realizes that the one person she trusted could be her biggest obstacle. But what's worse? This officer's actions have set off a chain reaction that could alter the entire system she's trying to dismantle. Will Lara's years of training be enough to outsmart a system that's already in motion? Or has her cover been blown for good? Stay tuned, because the game is only just beginning. Lara had spent months building her cover. She was embedded deep within a foreign intelligence network, gathering information that could potentially prevent a global catastrophe. Every move had been calculated, every conversation monitored, and yet, this one slip-up, this one wrong phone call, could tear everything down. The corrupt police officer, Officer Martinez, had been tasked with providing backup during one of her most sensitive meetings. She'd briefed him repeatedly, emphasizing the importance of discretion, but his personal biases clouded his judgment. Martinez had always been resentful of those he felt were above him, and Lara's calm, controlled demeanor had always irritated him. When he overheard a conversation that revealed just how deep Lara was embedded in their operations, a spark of jealousy ignited. He wasn't just a rogue cop anymore, he had become a loose cannon. That fateful call he made to a contact within the system had been the moment everything shifted. What he didn't know was that the network he had just alerted was far more dangerous and far-reaching than he could ever imagine. Every second after that call, Lara felt the noose tightening around her neck. Her every move was now being watched, her every action analyzed. As the stakes grew higher, Lara had to ask herself, who could she trust now? Would anyone in her network still have her back, or was it too late to salvage the mission? The clock was ticking, and the consequences of failure could be disastrous. Lara paced back and forth in her safe house, her mind racing. She could almost feel the weight of every shadow, every creak in the floorboards. The walls seemed to close in as the consequences of Martinez's actions set in. She had always known the mission was dangerous, but she had never anticipated being betrayed by someone on her own team, especially not someone as reckless as Martinez. But she couldn't afford to dwell on that. Every minute that passed was a minute closer to a full-blown disaster. Lara needed to move fast. She reached out to her most trusted contact, Carlos, a fellow CIA agent who had been in the game long enough to understand the stakes. His words, however, were less than reassuring. "Lara, the call has already made waves," Carlos had said, his voice tight with urgency. "We're not just talking about local law enforcement anymore. Your cover is compromised. If they know who you are, where you are, they'll come for you." Lara didn't have to ask who they were. The network she had infiltrated was far more dangerous than any rogue officer. They were deeply embedded, with connections that ran through government officials, criminal syndicates, and even some high-ranking police officers. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was institutional. But the threat didn't end there. She still had to navigate the tension between the other agents working on the mission, agents who might question her after the phone call. Was Martinez's slip-up an isolated incident, or was there someone else within their ranks playing a dangerous game? As the hours ticked away, Lara found herself facing more than just a mission gone awry. The system itself, corrupt, entangled, and fragile, was beginning to crumble, and the weight of keeping it all together was on her shoulders. Every decision had become a delicate balancing act. If she took one wrong step, she might find herself not only fighting against enemies she didn't know, but also against the very team she had worked alongside for so long. The question gnawed at her. Who could she really trust now? And how much longer before everything came crashing down? Lara sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. Her phone buzzed again, another encrypted message from Carlos. But this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was an ultimatum. She needed to make a decision, and fast. The network had already mobilized. If she didn't move now, they would have the upper hand. There was no room for hesitation. She glanced at the map spread across the table, her fingers tracing the locations she had memorized. Each point represented a contact, a safe house, a route she could take to escape. But nothing was safe anymore, not with Martinez's phone call sending ripples through the entire system. What was once a well-oiled operation had quickly become a maze of paranoia and betrayal. Every contact, every safe house, now seemed like a potential trap. Her mind flashed to the night before when she had received a cryptic warning. "They're watching you," the voice had said, its tone cold, unsettling. It had come from an unknown source, but Lara couldn't shake the feeling that it was someone close to her, someone within her own team. She tried to block out the fear creeping up her spine. Focus. The mission still had a chance, but only if she could outsmart those who were now hunting her. She needed to find a way to turn the tables, to gain back control. The clock was ticking, and with every second that passed, her options grew slimmer. Just then, her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a call. She didn't recognize the number. But something about the caller's ID caught her eye. Asterisk, it's them asterisk, she didn't know how, but she knew they were closing in. This was the moment she had been dreading. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. If she answered this call, everything would change. There was no going back. Would it be the breakthrough she needed, or the final step toward her downfall? The decision was in her hands. Lara hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. She knew that answering could either lead to her salvation or seal her fate. Her breath caught in her throat as she hit the answer button. The line crackled for a moment, then a familiar voice emerged from the static. "Lara, it's me." Her heart skipped. It was Carlos. But there was something off in his voice, a tightness, a hesitation that sent a cold shiver through her. "What's going on?" Lara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Listen closely," Carlos replied. "I don't have much time, but there's something you need to know." Her grip on the phone tightened. "What is it?" Carlos's voice dropped to a whisper. "Martinez wasn't the only one who betrayed you. I didn't think I'd have to say this, but it's me, Lara. I've been compromised." The world seemed to stop. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Carlos, her closest ally, the one person she thought she could trust, was now the one pulling the strings against her. "I had no choice," he continued, his voice strained. "They're watching me too, and they know about the mission. I'm trying to fix it, but you need to get out of there, now." Lara's mind raced. If Carlos was compromised, there was no one left she could trust. She glanced around the room, the walls suddenly feeling much closer, the shadows more menacing. She couldn't stay here, not with the network closing in from all sides. But where could she go? Who could she turn to? Carlos's voice broke through her thoughts. "Lara, you have to listen. There's a mole within the agency, someone high up. They've been feeding information to the enemy from the inside." A sickening realization hit her. The mission was no longer just about uncovering secrets. It had become a race against time to root out the mole, and to survive long enough to do it. "I can't trust anyone anymore, can I?" Lara muttered under her breath. Carlos didn't answer. Instead, there was a sharp click on the line, followed by silence. The call had ended abruptly. Was it his choice, or had someone else been listening in? Lara looked at the screen, her mind spinning. The walls were closing in. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger had shifted from the enemy to the people she thought were on her side. But there was no turning back now. Lara's pulse pounded in her ears as the phone call ended. For a moment, everything was silent. Too silent. She knew she couldn't waste time trying to understand Carlos's betrayal. There was no time for that. The pieces were falling into place, and she needed to move fast. With every instinct screaming at her to run, she grabbed her bag, her mind racing with options. She needed to get out of the safe house. The network was closing in on her, and there was no way to predict where the next betrayal would come from. The one thing she knew for sure was that Carlos wasn't her ally anymore. He had become part of the enemy. Lara rushed out of the apartment, slipping into the shadows of the alley behind the building. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. As she navigated through the streets, a wave of realization hit her. Her plan had shifted from extracting crucial intel to survival. She needed to get ahead of whoever was pulling the strings, and she had to act before the whole system collapsed. It was then that she heard it, the sound of a car engine slowing behind her. Panic surged through her as she darted into an alley, heart hammering in her chest. She pulled out her phone, only to see a new message flash across the screen. Asterisk, don't run. It's too late. Asterisk. Her breath hitched. The message wasn't from Carlos. It wasn't even from someone she knew. Someone else had been tracking her the entire time. She turned the corner sharply, only to be met with a face she never expected to see. Standing before her was Martinez, the corrupt officer who had set the entire chain of events in motion. But this time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Instead, he looked terrified, almost pleading. "Lara, listen to me. I didn't know they were watching me. I didn't have a choice," he gasped. "I was just trying to save myself. I thought I was helping." Lara's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. Martinez had been a pawn in a much bigger game, and now he was as trapped as she was. But who was pulling the strings? Who was orchestrating the entire mess? Before she could respond, a faint click echoed in the alley, the sound of a gun being cocked. Lara's instincts kicked in, and she spun to find another figure stepping into the light, a figure wearing the same uniform as Carlos. "Carlos." Lara's voice trembled as she faced her former ally, now holding a gun aimed directly at her. Carlos smiled coldly. "I told you, Lara, there's no one you can trust." But just as the weight of the moment settled in, a third figure stepped into the alley, shrouded in shadow. A voice, calm and authoritative, broke the tense silence. "Actually, Carlos, there's someone else you didn't account for." The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. Director Simmons, the head of their agency. Lara's jaw dropped in disbelief. Simmons had been the mole all along, the mastermind behind the operation to sabotage her mission. He had orchestrated every betrayal from the start. "You," Lara began, her voice faltering. Simmons shook his head, a small smile curling his lips. "I had to make sure you were in the right place at the right time, Lara. You were the perfect candidate to take down the system from the inside." A chill ran down Lara's spine as Simmons took a step closer, his expression unreadable. "But you see, Lara, there was never a mission. You were always just a distraction." Before she could react, Martinez, still in a daze, lunged at Simmons in a desperate attempt to stop him. In the chaos that followed, the gunshots rang out, the world spinning into a blur. When the smoke cleared, the only thing left was a single phone on the ground. The screen cracked, but still illuminated with one last message. "Asterisk, the game is over." Asterisk.